Have you ever felt like someone was just waiting for you to slip up? Like, no matter how hard you try, there's always that one person who's got your name on speed dial for the HOA. Well, that was my life. But instead of letting it get to me, I decided to flip the script, and the results were more epic than I ever imagined. But before we get into the drama, let me take a moment to wish something special for you. If you're watching this, I want to say a quick prayer for you and your loved ones. May you be protected from negativity, may your home be a place of peace, and may you always find creative ways to turn challenges into blessings. Amen. All right, let's set the scene. I live in a neighborhood where the lawns are supposed to be picture perfect. You know the drill. Grass cut to exactly 2 inches, edges trimmed, not a single weed in sight. And if you slip up, well, there's always someone ready to pounce. In my case, that someone was Mrs. Patterson. She's the self-appointed lawn police, binoculars in one hand, phone in the other, always ready to report the slightest infraction. Now, I'm not a slob. I mow my lawn, I water it, and I even pull the occasional weed. But sometimes, life gets busy. Maybe I skip a day. Maybe the grass grows a little taller than usual. But to Mrs. Patterson, that was a crime against humanity. Every week, like clockwork, I'd get a notice from the HOA. Your lawn is not in compliance. And every week, I'd look across the street and see her peeking through her curtains, just waiting for me to react. At first, I tried to keep up. I set reminders, bought a new mower, even tried those fancy lawn treatments. But no matter what I did, Mrs. Patterson always found something to report. One week, it was uneven grass. The next, dandelions visible from the street. I even got dinged for grass clippings on the sidewalk. It was like living under a microscope. The final straw came when I got a notice for excessive dew on the lawn. I'm not kidding. Apparently my grass was too wet in the morning, and that was attracting pests. I laughed so hard I nearly choked on my coffee. That's when I realized, no matter what I did, it would never be enough for Mrs. Patterson. So I decided to do something radical. If my lawn was such a problem, why not get rid of it altogether? I started researching alternatives, rock gardens, artificial turf, wildflower meadows, but then I stumbled on something that made me smile, a Zen garden. You know, those beautiful Japanese gardens with raked gravel, smooth stones, and peaceful little islands of greenery. The more I read, the more I loved the idea. Not only would it be low maintenance, but it would also be the ultimate statement: you can't report me for grass if I don't have any. I started sketching out ideas, watching videos, and even visited a local botanical garden for inspiration. I wanted this to be more than just a patch of rocks. I wanted it to be a masterpiece. And if I'm being honest, I wanted it to be big enough that Mrs. Patterson couldn't possibly ignore it. The next weekend, I rented a sod cutter and started removing every last blade of grass from my front yard. Neighbors slowed down as they drove by, some waving, others just staring in confusion. Mrs. Patterson, of course, was glued to her window, probably dialing the HOA as soon as she saw the first patch of dirt. I worked for days, digging, leveling, hauling in gravel and sand. I ordered smooth river stones, bamboo plants, and even a little stone lantern. My friends thought I was crazy, but I was on a mission. Every time I raked the gravel into those perfect, calming patterns, I felt a little more zen, and a little less bothered by Mrs. Patterson's constant surveillance. After a week of hard work, it was finally done. My front yard had been transformed from a battleground of grass into a peaceful, stunning Zen garden. There were winding paths of white gravel, carefully placed stones, a few artfully pruned shrubs, and a small bench where I could sit and enjoy the view. I even added a little sign that said, "Breathe in, let go." The morning after I finished, I sat on the bench with my coffee, soaking in the tranquility. That's when I saw Mrs. Patterson emerge from her house, marching across the street with a look of utter disbelief. She stopped at the edge of my yard, mouth open, eyes wide, just staring at the transformation. Pause. Have you ever had a neighbor who just couldn't leave you alone? Drop your story in the comments, or just type Team Zen if you're rooting for peaceful solutions. And if you're enjoying this, hit that like button so we can keep the good vibes going. Mrs. Patterson didn't say a word at first. She just stood there, scanning every inch of the garden, probably looking for something, anything to report. Finally, she cleared her throat and said, This, this isn't allowed. Where's your grass? I smiled and replied, The HOA rules say the yard must be well-maintained and visually appealing. There's nothing about grass being required. She huffed and stormed off, but I knew she wasn't done. Sure enough, the next day, I got a letter from the HOA. Your yard does not meet the community standards. But this time, I was ready. I sent them photos of my Zen garden, along with a copy of the rules. I even included a few articles about the environmental benefits of rock gardens and drought-resistant landscaping. While the HOA deliberated, something amazing happened. Neighbors started stopping by to compliment the garden. Some asked for tips, others just wanted to sit on the bench and enjoy the peace. Even people I'd never spoken to before came by to say how much they loved the new look. One neighbor brought over a little stone frog as a gift. Another left a note that said, "Thank you for making our street more beautiful." Word spread, and soon people from other parts of the neighborhood were walking by just to see the Zen garden. Kids loved raking the gravel, and a few families even started their own mini gardens. The whole vibe of the street changed. Less competition, more community. A week later, I got a call from the HOA president. He said, "We've reviewed your yard, and while it's unconventional, it's also beautiful. You're actually inspiring others to think outside the box. As long as it's maintained, you're in the clear." I could practically hear Mrs. Patterson fuming from across the street. But here's the best part. The HOA decided to update the rules to allow for alternative landscaping, as long as it's neat and attractive. Suddenly, everyone had options. No more cookie-cutter lawns, no more endless mowing. And it all started because one person decided to report me every week. Mrs. Patterson? Well, she still watches from her window, but now she does it surrounded by a street full of creativity and color. She never reported my yard again. In fact, a few months later, I noticed a little Zen garden statue appear in her flower bed. Maybe she finally found her own peace. As for me, I spend my mornings on the bench, sipping coffee, listening to the birds, and watching the world go by. My yard is a place of calm, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. So what's the lesson here? Sometimes the best way to deal with negativity is to create something beautiful. Don't let anyone steal your peace. Stand your ground, get creative, and remember that you have the power to turn even the most annoying situation into something amazing. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with a friend who needs a little inspiration. And remember, may your neighbors be kind, your mornings be peaceful, and your days be filled with Zen. Stay safe, everyone.